Hello, I'm Laura Bennett with German with Laura, and this is my second video in a 10-part series on how to learn German smarter, not harder. If you haven't already watched my first video on the 3 classic pitfalls that I see German learners fall into all the time, click above and watch that video first before you continue watching this video. In this video, we're going to talk about 3 ways that you can massively improve how you are learning German, and those 3 ways are: 1, you have to embrace being a white belt. 2, you need to leverage the advantages of being an adult learner of German. 3, you need to build a very specific German grammar foundation. Okay, so when it comes to being a white belt, this is my favorite point because so many German learners miss this and they make things so much harder for themselves. So instead of doing an instant immersion approach and throwing German at yourself from all angles and trying to work on all the skills at the same time, you're gonna work on listening comprehension and reading comprehension and speaking and writing. Instead of doing that, you need to break everything down into bite-sized chunks and start where it's very, very simple, even painfully simple, because as an adult, you want to sound like an adult right away, even when you're speaking a foreign language. But this is a terrible blunder, okay? You have to be comfortable being a beginner. That's what I mean by embracing being a white belt. This means, for example, that if someone asks you about your hobbies, right, and you're a beginner German learner, you can't then expect that right away you're going to be able to know the German where you could say, well, although I'm hardly a master because I only started playing a few years ago, I really do enjoy a nice game of chess from time to time. No, you're going to just be able to say, I like chess. And that's it. And that's fine, okay? So we have to break learning German, this whole huge task of learning German, down into its component parts, and you have to start at the beginning, being a white belt, and not try to jump to being a black belt right from the beginning. There are so many tips related to this concept that I get into more in my video on my top 10 study tips. But before you might watch that video, let's keep talking about these other 3 huge ways that you can learn German smarter, not harder. So the second way is leverage being an adult learner, okay? And what this looks like very specifically is grammar. That sounds so scary to most people because most native English speakers grew up hating English, right? Maybe you had a really terrible grade school teacher, right, who was trying to teach you about pronouns and verbs and all this different stuff, and you think you're terrible at it and it was just an awful experience. But, you have to work with this English grammar framework that you already have successfully built in your minds, okay? Because if you can bring that knowledge of English grammar that you use on a daily basis without thinking about it, if you can bring that to your consciousness and refresh your memory, or maybe learn correctly for the first time the differences between parts of speech and how they all work together in a sentence and all that kind of stuff, then you can go on to learn German grammar in a fraction of the time, because you can appropriately compare and contrast the new German grammar with the established framework for English that you already have in your head. This is so crucial that I actually created a course called English Grammar for German Learners. At the time that I'm recording this video, it's still free, but it has been such a game changer for so many German learners that it'd be totally worth paying for as well. So you should click below down in the description and click on the link to that English Grammar for German Learners course, so that when you're done with this series of videos, you can then go over and get started on that course right away and leverage your advantages as an adult learner of German. Okay, so then speaking of grammar, that brings us to the third point, which is you have to build a very specific German grammar foundation. Grammar is also a really huge topic and something that could keep you busy for probably even years, okay? But there is kind of a Pareto principle at play here, where there is a small body of grammar that you need to learn that's going to give you the most bang for your buck, because it's going to be what you use most of the time. And then there's a lot of other grammar stuff that you can save that for way down the road, and you're not really going to be missing out on anything. Definitely not at the beginning, okay? So what are some of the topics that I always cover with my students? We talk about German noun gender, plurals, the case system, declension patterns, verb conjugations, pronouns. I cover all of those topics in upcoming videos in this series, okay? And we're going to start with German noun gender, because before you can even dream about starting to learn vocabulary, which is usually the nouns first, you need to work on noun gender first so that you can utilize the best tips and tricks out there for making sense of German noun gender. Because hint, it is not just a random daddy das in front of nouns like you have been seeing in the apps or software programs that you've been working with. There are patterns, there are principles. It gets way easier. All of those shortcuts are in my next video on German noun gender, which you can click on here on the side. But before you do that, if you haven't yet subscribed, click on that button down below so you know when I come out with a new video. Then I'll see you in German noun gender next.